सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
We've been noting a change, a shift in the Ukraine-Russia warfare for some time, in the sense that it looks like Ukrainians are now able to shift the fighting or combat or some destructive power to areas deep inside Russian controlled territory, far away from the front line. So there was the incident that we talked about, the blowing up of the Saki air base in Crimea. That's more than a little over 200 kilometers away from the line of contact between the two forces. So the questions that come up in terms of what kind of instrument, missile, rocket could the Ukrainians have used? Was this maybe a special forces operation, etc.? Now a new evidence has emerged. After that Saki Air Force Base, we saw another one, a raid, again some kind of an attack, maybe a distant missile attack on a huge ammunition dump, also in the Crimean area. And once again you would say, okay, it's Crimea, it's deep inside Russian controlled territory, but it is still Russia. And while we were talking about this, yet another incident took place, and this was an attack over the Russian Black Sea Fleet in Sevastopol, which is also in the Crimean region, thereabouts. And this apparently was a drone attack, or maybe a suicide drone attack, because the Russians claimed that they had shot down the drone, but it looks like they said that they shot down the drone, but it fell on top of their headquarters. So I don't know what kind of a success is that if you shoot down a drone like that. It was more likely a kamikaze drone that went down straight into its target. So these three big attacks have taken place in the Crimean region. So you could again say, okay, the Russians annexed Crimea in 2014. It's far away from the front line, but it is still what the world acknowledges still to be the Ukrainian territory. But now it looks like action has moved right in the heart of Russia, in this case in Moscow itself. So what happened in Moscow this Saturday evening around 9 p.m. on Saturday Moscow time, that will be early hours of Sunday Indian time, that a young woman, just about 30, a woman called Darya Dugina, also known by a pen name of Darya Platonova. So Darya Dugina was killed. She was killed how? She was driving a Toyota Land Cruiser Prado, which blew up. So it's evident that somebody had planted a bomb in that car. So the car blew up. Those videos became visible across the world. And soon enough, news came out that the car had Darya Dugina in it. Now, a terror attack of this kind is rare in Moscow. There have been some in the past, but distant past. But a targeted assassination like this looks odd. Again, why would somebody target a 30-year-old woman who described herself as a journalist and commentator? The important thing is figure out who her father is. Her father is Alexander Dugin. Alexander Dugin is widely known as the brain of Putin. Brain of Putin, at least in terms of Putin's new revisionist ideas, Putin's ideas of rediscovering the old Russian glory of the empire, reuniting or recapturing or re-grabbing the regions that belong to it. Also this nostalgic claim that any part of that geography which is inhabited by Russian speakers or people who were native Russians belongs to Russia. So that is how a new Russia should be built. So Darya Dugina was the daughter of Alexander Dugin. Now Darya Dugina also was quite a significant figure. She had a PhD in philosophy from Lomonosov Moscow State University. She was also seen lately, she was a big supporter of the invasion of Ukraine, big backer of the war, wanted Putin to actually capture all the areas, not just of Donbass area, but maybe even beyond that. Basically was among those, like her father, who did not accept Ukraine being a separate country, or many of the other former republics of what used to be Soviet Union or the Tsarist Empire being sovereign independent countries now. In fact, only recently her pictures or selfies from Azovstal, do you remember? That was the famous or infamous huge steel plant where a bunch of die-hard soldiers of the Azov regiment were hiding and fighting the Russians, keeping them at bay for a very long time. So she had taken pictures of herself there, including some, if I read Ukrainian media, although there is a lot of disinformation, with bodies or a kind of macabre evidence of what might have happened there, but celebratory selfies and videos. So there is no doubt in terms of where she was. So she was blown up. Now, initially, there was some mystery as to who could have killed her. So, first of all, Denis Pushilin is like the president or the chief or the governor of the so-called Donetsk Republic. Remember Donetsk and Luhansk, the two so-called republics that Putin had recognized as sovereign countries. So Denis Pushilin, who's the governor or president or whatever you call him of Donetsk Republic, he said that this has been done by terrorists of the Ukrainian regime who were trying to kill Alex Dugin. Now the fact is that Alexander Dugin and his daughter Darya Dugina had gone together to a cultural festival. And this was Dugin's car and he was supposed to be driving back. It so happened that he did not take this car, he came by another car and he let his daughter drive it. So maybe the bomb meant for him actually took away the life of his daughter. Now, Mikhailo Podolyak, who's Mikhailo Podolyak? He is a spokesman of the Ukrainian government. He said, look, we are not a criminal or terrorist state like Russia. These are statements that you would expect to hear in such a situation, but I don't think Ukrainians are particularly in a state of mourning because Darya Dugina or the daughter of Alexander Dugin got assassinated like that. Then there were other voices, and I'm taking some of these from stories in TASS, some in The Guardian, some on the BBC, and I'll be sharing some of these to you, some on CNN. Now, Abbas Galimov, who used to be a speechwriter with Vladimir Putin, he said this is an act of intimidation which makes what was so far an abstract war, a war taking place far away, it has brought deep inside Russia. Now, Darya Dugina and her father both had been sanctioned by both the US and Britain earlier this year. Why? Because Alexander Dugin, because he's in so many ways Rajguru of the new Putin philosophy of this expansionist Russia, but also because the daughter used to run something called United World International. Now, United World International was a website that would put out a lot of stories and information. So this was labeled as a disinformation website, and that was sanctioned, and she was sanctioned by both the US and Britain. Her father, in any case, was sanctioned by both of them. Now, just last Thursday, remember she died on Friday evening, Moscow time. Thursday, the same week, Thursday, she had said in a TV discussion, and I quote her, she said, people in the West are living in a dream given to them by global hegemony. And then she said, America are a zombie society. People oppose Russia, but can't find it on the map. That last part, I'm afraid, might be correct. I think many people in America would struggle to find any country on the map of the world. So that might be true, but let's get back to the serious stuff now. Now, what is the organization? If she was assassinated, and this was actually an assassination plan to kill her father, who could have done it? So now another organization has popped up called National Republican Army. Now, National Republican Army is an organization that wasn't discussed very much, wasn't talked about very much, but now it comes out with a statement, and I will read out a few lines from you in a minute, justifying this and claiming this attack. So the existence of this organization was revealed, in fact, immediately after this assassination by Ilya Ponomarev. Now, who's Ilya Ponomarev? Ilya Ponomarev was a Russian lawmaker, Russian member of parliament, member of Duma, who voted against the annexation of Crimea. And because he did so, Obviously, he was called anti-national in Russia, and then he was in America giving lectures, etc., and campaigning against the annexation of Crimea, when Putin declared him persona non grata in his own country. So he could not come back to his own country. So he, on the other hand, went to Ukraine and has taken Ukrainian citizenship. So he said that this has been done by National Republican Army. So again, I quote to you Nadine Brzezinski, if I pronounce the name right. She has written an article on Medium, short article which you should read, where she has given us a transcript of a statement that this organization, which is National Republican Army, had put out. Now it so happens that this statement came up just a little before this assassination and disappeared in 2 minutes. But obviously anything that goes on internet can never go away. So people have taken screenshots, and I am reading it out from her article on Medium, and I'll share a link also with you. So this statement is like a manifesto, like a declaration of independence from Putin's regime, as it seems. And look at how it describes Putin, and I quote now: usurper of power, war criminal, destroyer of the countries, unleashed a fratricidal war among Slavic peoples and sent Russian soldiers to certain and senseless death, right? And it says that world is not the enemy of Russia. Russia is an enemy of humanity. That's what this statement says. And then it goes on to say, and I again quote, it's a momentous event. And remember, this statement has been put out before this event has taken place. That means before the assassination has taken place, just before the assassination. And it says a momentous event took place near Moscow last night, and the attack opens a new page in Russian resistance to Putinism. And then goes on to say, this is a new chapter, but not the last, which means this will carry on. So this tells us that something important has happened, and reaction from the Russian side is also very sharp. So again, Russian commentators meanwhile are now asking the Russian authorities or Russian military to target the decision-making centers in Ukraine, essentially in Kyiv, or even more specifically the headquarters of SBU, the Ukrainian Secret and Security Agency. Now, where do the bigger ideas of Aleksandr Dugin come from, and what exactly these are? So his ideas are rooted in the concept of Novorossiya. Now, Novorossiya is something that Putin had talked about around time he was annexing Crimea. That was 8 years ago. And so there's an old Adam Taylor article from Washington Post, of which I'll share a link with you. That article tells us that Putin, while holding a rare open-ended question and answer session, sort of fell into a philosophical reflection. And there he said there used to be a region called Novorossiya. Now that is essentially the region of Crimea, the entire Donbas area, and goes beyond that. So it takes Odessa, the port, in its sweep, and also Dnipropetrovsk, the big city on the banks of the Dnieper River, but on the other side, not on this side, not on this side where Donbas is, which Russia now mostly controls. So he said all of this used to be Russia. It was called Novorossiya. So why can't we get there? Now the fact is that Novorossiya is territory that Turkish Ottomans used to control in the past, and the Russian Empire had conquered it from them. Now, this whole complex thought, the reason we are mentioning this for you is that this whole complex thought is behind this Duginism. Dugin thinks that Russian-speaking people or Russian origin people in Asia and Europe, or all the general Eurasian region, they can come together. They should be brought together by force into a much larger national entity, that can take on the Americans and the West. So to that extent, it's almost a George Orwell 1984 kind of story. Now, the reason the other side finds him so triggering, that is Ukrainians, Russian liberals, as well as the Western world, that will become evident if you read some of the writings and speeches by him, stuff that he said and he's written. So in 2007, see what he wrote about Vladimir Putin. He said, quote, "There are no more opponents of Putin's course, and if there are, they are mentally ill and need to be sent off for clinical examination. Putin is everywhere, Putin is everything, Putin is absolute, and Putin is indispensable." Now, he's the author of the annexation of Crimea. And again, he wrote in his 1997 book, The Basis of Geopolitics, where he said, in principle, Eurasia and our space, the heartland Russia, remain the staging area of a new anti-bourgeois, anti-American revolution. The new empire will be constructed on the fundamental principle of the common enemy. And what is the common enemy? The rejection of Atlanticism, which is America and Europe, NATO essentially, the rejection of Atlanticism, strategic control of USA, or strategic control by USA, I presume it means, and refusal to allow liberal values to dominate us. And then he goes on to say that this common civilization impulse will be the basis of a political and strategic union. So this is, you may call it his geophilosophy, but the fact is, this is the new Russian Nazi doctrine. At some points of time, he's called this ideology nationalist Bolshevism, but just translate that also means nationalism and socialism of a kind, which is the same as Nazism. So this is an extreme fascist kind of philosophy. If he is driving Putin's thought and mind, definitely many of the things he's saying are the things that Putin is also saying. Go back to Putin's speech before the war began, when he again lapsed into the past and he said, how is Ukraine a country? And in fact, implicitly, he blamed Lenin for having allowed these new republics to come up. Many of those thoughts come from Dugin. So it is him that the attackers were trying to target. They ended up assassinating his daughter instead. But what has happened as a result is that this fighting has now been taken to the heart of Moscow.